On March 13, 2026, explosions move across Kharg Island in the Persian Gulf. Missile bunkers disappear. Radar positions go silent. Naval mine depots are destroyed. But beside them, Iran's storage tanks and loading terminals remain standing. This is the story of the island the United States attacked, deliberately spared, and may still try to take. The war began on February 28th. American and Israeli aircraft struck targets across Iran. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed during the opening attacks. Senior military commanders died with him. 8 days later, Iran selected his son, Mojtaba Khamenei, as the country's new supreme leader. The succession preserved the system. It did not restore its security. Iran answered with missiles and drones. American bases and regional allies came under attack. Commercial traffic through the Strait of Hormuz collapsed. Oil prices moved sharply upward. The narrow waterway normally carries roughly 1/5 of the world's energy shipments. But the most important location was not inside the strait. It was nearly 300 miles northwest. Kharg Island sits roughly 16 miles from Iran's mainland. It is small, dry, and heavily industrialized. Most of Iran's coastline is too shallow for the largest crude carriers. Kharg solves that problem. Deepwater terminals allow enormous tankers to dock, load, and depart for foreign markets. Around 90% of Iran's exported oil passes through the island. Pipelines arrive from the mainland. Storage tanks hold millions of barrels. Loading arms stretch over the water. A disruption at Kharg does not merely damage one port. It forces Iran to move oil through smaller, slower, and more expensive alternatives. That makes the island an economic bottleneck. It also makes it a target. During the March raid, U.S. Central Command said American forces struck more than 90 Iranian military targets. The target list included missile storage bunkers, naval mine facilities, radar systems, air defenses, and other military positions. The oil infrastructure was intentionally preserved. That distinction matters. The United States did not destroy the mechanism that generated Iran's export revenue. It destroyed much of the military shield surrounding it. President Donald Trump then warned that the decision could be reversed if Iran continued interfering with shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. The terminal remained operational. The warning remained with it. This was not the destruction of Kharg Island. It was the removal of one layer protecting it. Tankers could still load, pipelines could still carry crude, but every storage tank now stood beside evidence that American aircraft could reach the island and select individual targets without destroying the entire complex. Restraint became part of the weapon. For Tehran, the immediate question was whether Washington would actually go further. Damaging military sites was one thing. Destroying the terminal could shock global energy markets. Occupying it would place American troops on Iranian territory. Both carried risks far beyond the island. Then, on June 11th, Trump announced that a planned round of strikes against Iran had been canceled. He cited progress in negotiations. American stocks rose. Oil prices fell. Trump said an agreement could reopen the Strait of Hormuz and restrict Iran's path to a nuclear weapon. Iran said no final decision had been made. The cancellation created a simple image. The American president had threatened a major attack. Then the aircraft stayed back. Whether Tehran interpreted this as restraint, uncertainty, or an opportunity is impossible to know from the outside. But the pause did not settle the war. The proposed agreement weakened. Attacks continued. Shipping remained vulnerable. Washington and Tehran disagreed over sanctions, nuclear restrictions, frozen assets, and Iran's demand for recognition of its control over the strait. Then the ceasefire collapsed. On July 7th, the United States launched a new wave of strikes and reinstated pressure on Iranian oil sales. Central Command reported attacks against more than 80 targets. Iranian media reported explosions on Kharg Island, Keshem Island, and around the southern port cities of Sirik and Bandar Abbas. Kharg was not a closed chapter. The island had already lost military facilities in March. Now explosions were being reported there again as part of a wider campaign against Iran's coastal defenses, missile systems, naval forces, and infrastructure supporting operations around Hormuz. The June pause had not removed the target. It had delayed the next strike window. The campaign expanded quickly. By July 23rd, Central Command had announced 13 consecutive nights of attacks against Iranian military targets. Strikes moved along the coast and farther inland. Bridges, transport links, surveillance positions, air defenses, missile facilities, and Revolutionary Guard sites appeared in the reporting. Iran continued firing back. American installations in Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Iraq, and elsewhere faced missiles and drones. Some were intercepted, others were not. By July 24th, the war had killed 18 American service members. Hundreds more had been injured. Thousands of people had died across the wider conflict. The cost was no longer theoretical. Neither was the economic pressure. Brent crude briefly returned to around $100 per barrel after attacks threatened shipping near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. By July 24th, it remained above $96. Tanker traffic through Hormuz fell close to its lowest level in months. Ships changed routes. Insurance costs rose. Every new strike carried consequences far beyond the target itself. Kharg sits inside that system. Destroying its oil terminal could cut deeply into Iran's revenue. But it could also remove supply from an already disrupted market. It could raise fuel prices for countries supporting the war. It could damage infrastructure that a future Iranian government would need. So Trump raised another possibility: taking the island. He publicly discussed sending American forces to seize Kharg and control its oil infrastructure. Military deployments into the region increased. Marines and airborne troops were moved closer. Administration officials continued to describe ground operations as one of several available options. On a map, Kharg may look manageable. It is isolated. Its defenses have been repeatedly struck. American aircraft and warships already operate throughout the surrounding waters. Capturing it could be fast. Holding it would be different. The Iranian mainland is only around 20 miles away. Missiles, drones, and artillery could reach the island with little warning. Mountainous terrain near the coast could hide low-flying drones. American troops would be defending fuel tanks, pipelines, docks, and exposed industrial structures beside an enemy that would not need to cross the sea to attack them. Iran would also be firing toward its own most valuable infrastructure. That does not make an attack impossible. It makes every interception critical. A seizure would require control of the surrounding airspace and water. Iranian launch sites would need to be suppressed. Mines would need to be cleared. Troops would have to secure the airport, terminal facilities, pipelines, and loading areas. Supply routes would need constant protection. Then the operation would have to continue. One missed drone could ignite a storage area. One surviving missile battery could close the port. One Iranian decision to destroy its own equipment could turn a valuable bargaining chip into burning machinery. Taking Kharg would produce a powerful image. Keeping it might produce a long war. This is why some military and energy analysts argue that a blockade is safer. Ships carrying Iranian oil can be intercepted farther from the mainland. Tankers can be redirected without placing thousands of American troops inside range of Iranian weapons. Much of the economic pressure can be applied from the sea. The United States has already demonstrated this approach. American forces have boarded, redirected, and in some cases disabled vessels accused of violating the blockade. But a blockade does not create the same psychological effect as an occupation. A red, white, and blue flag over Kharg Island would show that Iran could no longer physically control the center of its oil economy. It would also transform American involvement. Aircraft can leave after a strike. Ground troops must remain after a seizure. Kharg is therefore more than an oil terminal. It is the line between coercion and occupation. Another target may push that line even further. Near Iran's Natanz nuclear complex is a fortified underground site known as Pickaxe Mountain. Construction began after a 2020 sabotage incident at Natanz. Analysts examining satellite imagery believe tunnels may reach at least 100 meters below the mountain. Iran says there is no nuclear activity there. Independent analysts say the facility does not appear operational, although construction has continued. Trump has threatened to attack it. Experts believe the deepest sections may be beyond the reach of conventional bunker-busting weapons. Damaging them could require repeated strikes, attacks on tunnel entrances, sabotage, or forces operating on the ground. Kharg Island and Pickaxe Mountain represent two different forms of pressure. One threatens Iran's revenue. The other threatens the infrastructure surrounding its nuclear future. Both are difficult to destroy completely. Both are harder to control afterward. And both could turn a limited military objective into an open-ended commitment. This is where the claim that Iran had broken Trump begins to collapse. The June cancellation was real. So was the market relief that followed it. But the strikes returned. The target list widened. Kharg was hit again. Ground operations remained under discussion. Yet the opposite claim also fails. Trump has not broken Iran. The Strait of Hormuz remains contested. Iran continues launching missiles and drones. American casualties have increased. The war has cost the United States tens of billions of dollars. A protected oil terminal still stands on Kharg Island, surrounded by destroyed military positions and the possibility of another attack. The island was not erased. The assumption that it was untouchable was. As of July 25th, American troops have not seized Kharg. Its oil infrastructure has not been completely destroyed. The terminal remains both an asset and a hostage, operating beneath a threat that Washington has repeatedly demonstrated but not fully executed. On March 13th, the storage tanks survived because someone chose to spare them. The next time aircraft approach Kharg Island, will that choice survive too?